Hi, everyone. We're live. I'm Debbie Schwartz, founder of Road to College and the Paying for College 101 Facebook group. I'm here tonight with John Fees. He's the co-founder of GradGuard, and we're going to talk about everything you need to know to help protect your students' college life and your family's investment in college. And I always love to give people a chance to just join. You probably just got notified. And if you could put a comment in the comments below, just tell us where you're from, what year your students in high school or college, how many kids you have. It's just helpful for us to gauge who's watching. And we have a ton of questions, both people who wrote in the Facebook group and people who sent me emails. So I think if you have any questions about this topic, you're going to get them answered tonight. And if we don't answer something, always feel free to put your question in the comments. So I don't see any posts from people, but I know you're out there because I see the numbers. Okay, here they come. So people saying hi. Thank you, Colleen from Illinois. Somebody from California. So great. And I'm sure they'll start to pop up. So while they're popping up, I'm going to introduce John again. And thanks for coming, John. This is a topic that we haven't really covered at all. And of course, with everything going on, it's come to light. Although, you know, insurance has been around for a long time. So maybe you could just kind of introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about GradGuard, and then we're going to get into kind of all the questions and details about this topic.
Absolutely. And Debbie, I've been a subscriber to Road to College for myself. I've got a rising senior at Arizona State in the honors college there, and I've got a entering freshman who's going to go to UC Berkeley this year. So, and I've got 3 more kids to keep finding ways to help pay for college.
Right. It's kind of like when you're a parent in the space and you work in this space, you kind of see it from all angles.
Right. So for everybody, I'm very much in the same position that many of you are, trying to evaluate how to make good decisions for my family, how to make good financial decisions as well. And really, I co-founded GradGuard with my business partner, Bill Sunnison, 11 years ago. And primarily, the goal was to try to help mitigate the risks of sending someone to college. And both Bill and I were fortunate. Bill had gone to Marquette. I went to Arizona State. Back when we were in school, college was affordable. You could actually work your way through school. Both Bill and I were on scholarships. And what we had learned was that, frankly, the investment, just the pure cost of college, has created a lot more risks for families and students. And we've really spent the last decade trying to become authorities on how to mitigate those risks. Wow, that's amazing. I didn't realize 11 years ago. Yeah, it's not been easy. GradGuard is not a broker. We are a program manager, which means we're a specialist. We went out and found the research about the risks of going to college, and one of them was paying for college. And this idea of tuition insurance was kind of a novel idea, although it had been around a long time. In fact, the prep schools in the Northeast have offered it for many, many years. Many of the elite institutions in the country, from Harvard to MIT to all the Ivies, pretty much have all offered it. I was surprised because I didn't know much about insurance at how difficult it was going to be to create a nationally available product so that students at Arizona State and UCLA and every university in the country could also protect themselves, and not just the students that went to elite schools. And that was actually harder to do than I'd ever realized because we had never done anything with insurance. But to do it now and with this pandemic surrounding us and surrounding the lives of our families is really gratifying because we work with a company called Allianz. They're the world's largest insurance company. They're the largest provider of travel insurance in the world as well. They're really well known, and they are working with us to make certain that at this moment, that although pandemics are excluded typically from coverage in all insurance policies, they've made an exception that policies that are purchased currently are also going to include coverage for COVID-19 withdrawals. So students that withdraw due to being diagnosed with COVID-19 will be eligible just like they would be under other illnesses and other injuries and other covered medical reasons. Now, that may change in January if we have severe losses, but I will tell you, we are thankful to work with such a great insurance company that this is exactly the moment in time when tuition insurance is needed, but it's also done without any extra costs. We're not raising the rates. What we are doing is working carefully and closely with universities to make certain every student has the opportunity to know both the refund policy, but also that it's as easy to buy tuition insurance as it is to buy travel insurance.
So maybe let's just step back a little bit and explain to people, you started to, but kind of what tuition insurance covers.
What does it do? Yeah. So tuition.
And then how do people get it? Because I think that they don't realize, that about the working with the college and, and how they get, if and can they get it on their own. So kind of like give them the groundwork.
Yeah. So the groundwork is tuition insurance pays for college when something unexpected happens that would require your student to complete a medical withdrawal. A medical withdrawal is not a choice. All right. It is something that your physician recommends because of the well-being of the student. And that includes illnesses, mental health and physical illnesses. It includes injuries such as concussions, accidents. It also includes some conditions that might lead to a student withdrawing, such as substance abuse, such as the death of a tuition payer, for instance, a parent. So think of it in the broadest terms, in terms of something that is unexpected. It's not dropout insurance, and it's also not insurance for a disruption in the academic term caused by the school. So for instance, last spring, tuition insurance would not have paid due to the change in the medium that classes were delivered in. And so a lot of times people had hoped that it would, but it doesn't, because in truth, we're all disappointed that the classes have moved online or that students had to return home. But the reality is there was no financial loss technically. There might have been for housing and there might have been for room and board, but that would have been a private matter between students and their institution. So first and foremost, tuition insurance is a lot like travel insurance for college. It pays for legitimate, unexpected reasons for your student to withdraw from school. Now, the way the most important thing is this is, from my point of view, is really what's happened since we started the company is universities have become less generous with their refund policies. We did a survey of 179 schools representing over 2 million students last December. Of those 179 schools, only 6% provided 100% refunds. In most schools, if they do provide refunds, it's only for tuition. There's no refunds for deposits, no refunds for academic fees. There's typically no refunds for housing and room and board costs.
And you know what, John, don't mind. I have to admit, I feel a little embarrassed, but this is the truth. Until I kind of was reading up on this, I never looked at my own daughter's school's refund policy.
Yeah.
And I bet you people who are watching, like how many of you have even gone to read the refund policy?
You know, what I'm really proud of is the schools that work with us and work with GradGuard are embracing kind of this radical transparency. First of all, it's paying for college is typically the second largest expense in our family's lives, and next to a mortgage. And yet it's one of the most opaque decisions we all make. We don't know the terms and conditions. We're thankful for our son or daughter being able to go to the school. We're thankful for the scholarships they may or may not have received. We're more concerned about their well-being and how to pay for it than the terms and conditions. And although universities are most oftentimes nonprofits, the reality is they depend on those tuition dollars more than ever before. And so they're not in a position to provide a refund, where back when I went to ASU in the 80s and it was $450, they could provide a refund. So when most of us were in college ourselves, then we really don't have an expectation that the school wouldn't take care of it. But that's not what's happening today. Most schools do not provide a refund, and you shouldn't expect one. I would encourage everybody, though, go to your parents' groups on Facebook for your, I know I'm part of one for ASU, I'm part of one for UC Berkeley. People are asking about tuition insurance. The question really isn't just about asking, does tuition insurance, is it available to me at my school? That is by far the most inexpensive way to purchase it. But the most important question is, where do we find the refund policy? Where do we find the terms and conditions? And universities are increasingly starting to add consumer disclosures to the bottom of their websites. But if their refund policy is not there, in fact, I was visiting with the school trying to get them to offer this program to their students. It was University of Arizona, and I couldn't find the refund policy on their school. I call the bursar, you can't even speak to the bursar. Now, I want them to offer tuition insurance because I think their students deserve the opportunity to protect themselves. But for them to not publish it really is a disappointment. Now, my wife told me, don't mention a specific school, but I am mentioning my rival, so I can mention my rival. So, any Wildcats that are on the line today, you should ask your school where the refund policy is. But I will tell you, I think with coronavirus and the lawsuits against schools, you're seeing more schools embrace kind of this radical transparency. So I really think overall that each of us as parents are going to become much more familiar with how terms and conditions of schools work. So parents should see if they can find the refund policy on the website. If they can't, call and ask, because as you said, John, we're all consumers, and just as you would purchase anything else, you should know kind of all the terms and conditions, and that includes a refund policy. And so, and then you kind of skipped over it, but maybe explain how people can get tuition insurance, because it kind of really works through your college, or the best case. The best way and the most affordable way to buy coverage, and most of our universities, it's priced about $106 for $10,000 of coverage. You buy it by term, and you typically buy it when you're paying for tuition, just like you're paying your bill. We've got integrations deeply within the bill payment process, so it's very convenient to enroll in. Now, if your school doesn't offer tuition insurance, you can visit GradGuard.com, but it is more expensive. It's typically 2% or $200 for $10,000 of coverage. And that's still relatively affordable, but it's not as inexpensive as I believe it should be, which is when every student's given the opportunity to protect their investment in education, the cost goes down and the coverage expands. And that's really why universities who offer these programs are really doing a service to their students. And most of all, they're really giving you the confidence to be able to overcome something unexpected from happening. Now, COVID brings that top of mind. We're all worried about our own children and family members becoming ill. But the truth is, every year, 2% of college students get mono. It's even more than that. I think it's twice that many that get concussions. Not that every student that gets mono or every student that's going to have a concussion is going to not be successful and be able to complete the term, but a large number of them are. And when you say 2% of 8 million students, you're talking about a lot of impacted students. And most of all, a lot of financial losses. We estimate that students and families lose about $1 billion a year for legitimate, preventable financial losses. And we really exist, and our mission is to help schools protect their students. And I appreciate everybody's interest today. The big thing you can do is tell everybody about it, because your schools, if they offer it, will save you money. So if your school doesn't, well, first of all, I'm going to keep repeating this, but go find your refund policy and check to see if your school offers tuition insurance that you can buy through the school. And if it doesn't, you should ask why. Because the more that people will ask at a certain school, they might realize that families are interested. And the truth is, just like everybody on the line here today, I think, tuition insurance was not something I heard of. Unless I lived in Boston, I would never have heard of it. I'd grown up in Arizona. All of a sudden, I find out about tuition insurance because I'm living around people that have it. And so we just made it available to everyone. Visit GradGuard.com for more information. You can speak to our licensed agents, and they'll advise you about it. The real question isn't, I'm not really trying to force anybody to buy it. There is COVID coverage currently. That may not be the case in January, but for this academic term, if you come and purchase it through GradGuard or through your school, Allianz is making an accommodation, and we'll send you the very specific information. Secondly, I would just really encourage you to really ask yourself and your family's financial planning if you can afford the financial loss, and what can you, if something unexpected happens. And in my circle of friends here in Phoenix, almost all of us seem to know somebody that had a student leave college for some unexpected, legitimate health reasons. And as a result, it's really the big question is, can you afford to lose $15,000 or $20,000? Because even if your student's on scholarship, you're losing the money for housing. Typically, you're losing the academic fees. I look at my son; he's at ASU. He's mostly on scholarships, but I'm still spending almost $5,000 a term just on housing, and another almost $3,000 in academic fees and deposits. All that money is gone. So it's $8,000 of coverage I need. I can buy that easily through GradGuard.
So Anna has a question.
Right.
Going to GradGuard.com, do you see a list of schools that are offering?
We work with over 330 universities, so a lot of great schools are on there, from Harvard, MIT to Auburn, Alabama, Tennessee, Purdue, and go down the whole list. We're happy to send you the list, but I would also just say go to GradGuard.com. The first thing at GradGuard.com is a college school search engine. So when you search your name, say USC or UCLA or Arizona State, you'll see the insurance programs that are available to your students at that school.
So Colleen's asking, if COVID illness isn't covered potentially in January, are you able to cancel the insurance or the unused premium? But really, you said you get the insurance by semester. So I guess
by term. So you'll be able to at that time, if it's no longer covered, we'll be certain to disclose it. If it's no longer covered, that's because there was a huge problem with it. The truth is, Allianz has a 15-day look back as well, so you can actually get a refund during the first days of the policy if something changes in your life. And I'll tell you, I'm a real skeptic of financial service companies. Both Debbie and I have worked in banking and in financial services. And I really, we founded this company with a real clear goal of have no gotchas. So the program works exactly as we promise. I would say one of the important questions I get asked a lot is, what about pre-existing conditions?
Yep.
And so if your son or daughter has a medical condition such as Crohn's disease heading into college, I highly recommend, or any vulnerabilities like that you purchase tuition insurance. You don't know if you're going to have a flare-up. Tuition insurance works for that student, even with an underlying health condition, as long as you have a physician prior to the start of school recommend or verify that the student's well enough to attend school. As long as you don't expect to withdraw, this coverage works. And I'm really proud of Allianz. They're a great insurance company. You can listen to our testimonials. You can see them on our GradGuard's YouTube channel. We're there for people when there's a crisis. When you actually have a student leaving school because of a crisis, you're much more concerned about their well-being than you are about the loss of money. But then 6 weeks later, after everything is stabilized, then you realize, oh my gosh, I just lost that money. What we want to do is make it easy for you to focus on the most important thing, which is the well-being of your child.
So Shari has a question. Should we cover scholarship and student loan amounts?
Yeah, we don't really care where the money comes from. It is the net cost. So if it comes from a 529 plan or savings accounts, but it is the net cost that you pay. Many times universities refer to scholarships, but they're not really scholarships. They're really more discounts, which means there was no out-of-pocket expense to you. If, however, you had scholarship money that was from a third party and paying for college, which contributed to lowering the cost, that would be a financial loss. You can't reuse that scholarship money. And so, we're indifferent about where the funding came from. We're really just trying to verify the actual fiscal financial loss.
So Karen has wrong question. Sorry. Karen has a question. Interesting. If your child's school offers tuition insurance, but through another company, can you still choose GradGuard instead?
Absolutely. And the other company is a really respected company called Doers. I have a lot of respect for them. It's like the Scotch. They're the pioneers in this business. The biggest challenge with the Doers program is they typically provide less than 100% coverage. We're a little bit different. We sell up to $40,000 of coverage per term. Where they typically work with the university and offer some chosen amount. Most times it's 75% of the cost of your payment. They do that so that a lot of students will buy it, but I'm not of the opinion that anybody should tell me I'm only eligible for 75%. We provide up to 100% of the financial investment you're making in your student's education. And that's the primary difference. Our products are actually very similar in other respects. But you can purchase it through GradGuard, and we'd be happy to serve you.
So I think just because, and maybe people have joined a little later, because this question keeps coming up. So maybe if you don't mind repeating it just one more time about the, the tuition insurance and at least GradGuard, how it's handling COVID illness.
Yep. I see a Facebook user from UT. I think that's University of Tennessee. Absolutely. We're a partner with Tennessee. Love that campus and community. And Alabama and Auburn. I would say the way tuition insurance works is that we provide coverage for a student who withdraws for a legitimate medical reason when a physician recommends that the student leave school due to illnesses, injuries, accidents, substance abuse, any number of unexpected reasons. Specifically, we also include coverage currently for this term for illnesses that are related to a student withdrawing due to being diagnosed with COVID-19. So that specific designation, though, is an accommodation. What that means is we didn't have enough time to work with the insurance company to refile an endorsement to the insurance policy to change it permanently. All right, this is a business practice that Allianz has agreed to implement. And the terms and conditions are always important to read for an insurance policy. Every time we sell a policy, we disclose this completely and all the language is there. The most important thing is it's available to anybody who purchases insurance today, and it may change in the future. We may not be able to offer this, or may not have an accommodation in January based on what we don't know. Generally speaking, though, young people with no underlying health conditions, they should be able to endure and survive the semester. But there are other illnesses and other injuries that are just as likely to happen as COVID. And so my recommendation is to look at the well-being of your student and to look at the financial risk you can afford to take. Ultimately, if you can't afford to take, pay for an extra term or extra semester of college, then tuition insurance is a good idea.
So Rama is asking about how this works in relation to the death of a paying parent, which again, I actually was not familiar about that coverage until we started talking.
Yeah, that's a really good example. Actually, we do pay for the death of a paying parent, or what we refer to as the tuition payer. And so if that tuition payer died from COVID, for instance, 19, a diagnosis, and the student withdrew, the student still has to withdraw to complete the eligibility for coverage. But in those cases, it is covered. I would say we also cover the unthinkables, attempted suicide and suicide. Nobody wants to ever think about this, but this is the leading cause of death among college students today. And it's something we should all take concern about. It is something that I think we all worry about. So. Here's a good question from Dawn. Maybe talk a little bit more about the mental health issues that it covers. The mental health issues, my wife happens to be a clinical psychologist. It's something we're deeply familiar with. Mental health conditions are treated as ordinary illnesses, right? And we've worked hard on this over the years. It has changed periodically. Sometimes certain tuition insurance policies pays different for mental health claims. Our policies that are sold on a direct consumer basis do provide 80% coverage for mental health withdrawals, and that's largely due to the high diagnosis of anxiety and other underlying mental health conditions of students. All that's required, though, is a licensed clinician for mental health in that state verify that it's not in the interest of the student to continue on with the semester. It works really just like the same way other illnesses are, and I'm happy that we provide such good coverage.
So I have a question that was sent in earlier. This is kind of basic, but I think it would be good to cover just about the timing. When does the policies have to be purchased? We talked about it. Most likely it's going to be purchased through the college, but I'm assuming that there's a timing involved of
my recommendation. Yeah, absolutely. You have to purchase it just like all insurance. You have to purchase it before you smell smoke. Before the day, first day of class is typically required. If you miss that day, we'll refund your money. But the truth is it has to be purchased prior to the start of classes.
So we've now talked a lot about tuition insurance, but there is other insurance needs, that maybe people are a little bit more familiar with, but maybe if you can talk about other types of insurance that families should be thinking about.
Well, that's going to bore everybody on a Sunday night on the East Coast, but I didn't start my career in insurance, and insurance is just a remedy for risks that are preventable. And I really believe that college life is filled with risks that are unknown to parents. I think we all have a lot of anxiety. As I mentioned, I've got 2 kids in college. We all have a lot of nervousness about sending our kids away to live independently for the first time. I think today's conversation on tuition insurance is first and foremost, it's the first question you should ask yourself. And secondly, you really need to first and foremost concern yourself about the health and well-being of your student. So the next insurance question naturally is, does my health insurance apply? Does my family health insurance apply to my young student in college? And typically it does. After ACA, students were eligible to stay on their family policy until 26. Prior to that, that was not always the case. And really now about 10% of college students, so about 800,000 students, however, do get their health insurance directly through their university. Many of them happen to be grad students. Those programs, though, are typically implemented on a waiver basis. So many of us as parents will get billed for the university health plan unless we waive off, unless we show evidence that we have health insurance for our students. So I'd recommend that first and foremost, don't pay for health insurance twice. So that's a really important piece for your students. The second piece is most of our students, especially as first-year students, are going to live independently. They're going to live on campus or in student housing. And this is something that for $11 or $12 a month is the biggest no-brainer ever, which is to purchase a renter's insurance policy for your student. GradGuard is also the largest provider of renter's insurance to universities in the country. And we designed a program exactly for students. It's got a $100 deductible. It's got worldwide property coverage. So if your backpack gets stolen when you're on spring break or on a study abroad program, it works. But the most important piece is that it also pays for the liability that a student might create. And so, for instance, there are almost 2,000 fires in dorms every year of the last 10 years. And those fires today are not like it was in the 80s. It's the sprinklers go off and everybody's electronics are ruined on that state. And so the average cost of a fire sprinkler going off is typically around $60,000. Wow. And if your student doesn't have insurance, you're going to have a problem paying for that. And the universities offer our program primarily so they don't have an adversarial collections relationship. So the last piece I would say is don't expect your homeowner's insurance to pay for it. It is true that some homeowners insurance covers your students while they're away, but typically it's not very practical. It's my homeowner's insurance policy has a $1,000 deductible, and I would be foolish to write a claim on it because then my rates are going to go up. And eventually, if I file too many claims on behalf of my students, I could be dropped even. So it's much better to buy a renter's insurance policy from GradGuard or from a third party to make certain that you've got that type of protection as well.
And this might just be a basic or silly question, but does it also cover if particularly computers, if they get stolen, if you're in the library or someplace else? Yeah,
one university just a few years ago, I won't embarrass them, had 70 backpacks stolen the first week of school. Backpacks worth $2,000 or $3,000. Every book in it can be resold by a drug dealer. The new electronics are all worth something. So absolutely, stolen backpacks are very, very common. ASU, my alma mater, the head of DPS referred to ASU as a mall for thieves. And it is really true for whether it be bikes or other things. Bikes are our #1 things we replace. But we've got a great case study or testimonial on our YouTube site that's a student whose laundry was stolen.
I know. I was going to ask you to share that story.
And you just don't realize sometimes, and we work with a lot of great schools, a lot of these people have expensive clothes. I don't have that, neither do my kids, but it's a good thing. The only other thing I would say is that the last insurance policy none of us want to think about is life insurance. And I really believe that it's a very prudent thing to do 2 things. One is if you're a co-signer for a student loan, it is absolutely essential that you consider purchasing an equal amount of term life insurance on your student. Because typically most private student loans do not provide coverage, and therefore they require you to pay the debt that you guaranteed in the case of the death of a student. And so that's kind of like mortgage insurance. It's really practical. Nobody wants to think about it. But I think there's two benefits. One is don't think about the mortality of our college students, but do think about the good value you're going to demonstrate by securing coverage, because many health conditions start to emerge in their 20s, and it makes young people less insurable, or it'll be more expensive if they wanted to buy a life insurance policy later in life when they bought a house or they had children. So buying it early for your family is a really inexpensive and smart thing.
So, and if you're co-signing on a loan, you might be starting when your child is a freshman. I mean, you shouldn't wait necessarily until they graduate. You should, think about this insurance when you're co-signing, because again, if something were to happen, what you're liable for that loan potentially.
$100,000 policy is less than $100 for most people, and if you needed $250,000, you could do that easily for not much more. It's definitely a smart way to have confidence as you invest in your students' education.
And so, what's your opinion? We talked about this a little bit, even about kind of reviewing or looking at life insurance for parents as kids are going to college.
Well, I'm a big believer of it because I've seen it in my own lives with parents that I've known that have died unexpectedly. I really believe it's our generation, Gen X, is actually one of the least insured for life insurance ever. So it's a smart thing to buy. A term life policy is inexpensive relatively. As even in our 50s, it's still affordable and worth doing. So a term policy is right, and I would totally recommend it. While you're writing a big check to college, it's hard to imagine that, but you just don't know what is in store for your own lives. We've worked with universities actually to try to offer life insurance directly to their families because we think it's that valuable, and we also know that schools are not in the financial position to really support students that have a death of a parent. They don't all have the liquidity and the funding these days to really do what they did 20 years ago, which is to help that student finish. So more than likely, in the case of death of a parent, it's going to alter the course of the decision you made to send your child to that school or potentially your whole family. So it's just a smart buy to have.
Yeah, I always bring it up because I think that sometimes parents think, well, my child's 18, maybe I actually can reduce my life insurance because, they're legal and, but if you're sending them to college and unfortunately something happens, and that happened to a friend of mine, that life insurance money needs to now, cover whatever the college costs are for that child to finish and be available for the surviving spouse. So you have to kind of like broaden your thinking about what that money is needed for at that point.
That's right. I see some of the questions too, Debbie. One of them was a question on, isn't it sad that kids steal? And it is true that kids steal, but it's typically not other college students that are stealing from one another. It's actually much more organized. It's literally organized crime in some cases where they have kids, they have people that are organized in the way they go about this.
Because they probably know like move-in dates, all that type of stuff.
They do. And so you've got to be on your guard and be aware of it. The typical policy for us that we sell is $5,000 of property coverage and $100,000 of liability coverage. That typical policy is around $13 or $14 a month, depending what state you live in. So it's totally inexpensive. It doesn't have a credit check, which again, students don't typically have credit scores. Most other renter's insurance that's sold online requires a credit check. And so our program is designed exactly for students. And when you see it, you'll typically see it in the leasing process. So when you sign your lease, you'll be given an opportunity to purchase our renter's insurance program as well.
But again, if it's not offered, can they go directly to GradGuard?
Directly to GradGuard, yeah. And I think as parents, I mean, all of us are a community. We're on this journey together. And I think that the more you can share this, these are good practical tips for folks. Know your refund policy and make certain the school's told it to you. If you can't afford the cost of an extra semester, then seriously consider tuition insurance. The same thing is for your university's housing. If you can't afford to replace your stolen or damaged backpack, then getting renter's insurance makes a lot of sense as well.
And so does the renter's insurance only apply to dorms, or what about for students who are living off campus?
The whole goal is to take it off campus with you. And frankly, you have coverage when you return home for property loss. So, and then when you move into student housing off campus or an apartment, or my son's moving into an apartment right now, he's already got his renter's insurance policy, which, by the way, 84% of apartment owners require students to have renter's insurance. So this is it's going to be something that you're going to have to buy at some point. You might as well have them covered from day one.
So actually, Teresa has an interesting question about liability insurance, which I hadn't really thought about.
So that's why our renter's insurance program is different than property insurance. There are companies that offer property insurance, which is kind of like Apple Care for the damaged electronics. You need a liability coverage as well. And liability coverage is really those for what I described, the fire that you cause, a student related liability, such as throwing a Frisbee and hitting the sprinklers, or hanging your clothes off the sprinklers and the sprinkler goes off. We paid a claim just 2 years ago for over $100,000 for exactly that. And again, today, back when I was in college, I only had vinyl records and some Levi's. It's a very different world today with all the electronics.
It's interesting to hear you give those examples. I would not have thought about them, but now that you say them, I could definitely imagine, a college student doing that.
And candles are prohibited in dorm rooms, right? But kids use them all the time. So liability is the reason to do it, because both the liability, that's really where you start getting into bottom line, you can probably afford a $500 backpack or a $2,000 backpack stolen. It's disruptive and it's difficult and it's a setback. But when you have liability coverage exposure for your student and they're responsible for the damages they create, this really helps you do it. So
Steve has a good question too. What about like roommates? And what if only one has the insurance? Does everybody in the apartment need to have insurance?
It is true that renter's insurance can extend to multiple people, but then the coverage is divided by those numbers of people. I really, for $13 a month, I recommend everybody gets one so you don't have a fight over the coverage at all. So for $13 a month, I would just recommend buying it for each of the students they live together with.
And Katya is saying she's concerned that she might have forgotten to sign up for this.
Well, you can come back. Yeah, Katya, good question. Visit GradGuard.com. All we need is your zip code. And our program is terrific because it's got a $100 deductible and no credit scores. It works really, really well. And if you haven't been already signed up for your housing, just ask your university for it as well. And you'll probably hear that it's from GradGuard as well.
So there was a question earlier on, and maybe you could just kind of clarify. Going back to tuition insurance, what exactly is covered? Like somebody asked, is room and board and other additional fees, are they all covered in addition to the tuition?
I got to say, tuition insurance is the worst named product ever. I'm sorry for that. It is, tuition insurance covers more than tuition. It covers deposits, academic fees, housing, and other expenses that were billed directly by the school. So it's a terrific program. Basically, we're trying to give you a do-over in the case of any number of unexpected events that will lead to the withdrawal of your student due to an illness, an injury, an accident, the death of a tuition payer, all of those types of events that might disrupt your education. We want to make certain you've gotten a do-over for, so you can return to campus and get back on the path to graduating. That's really what it's meant for. It's not an incentive to drop out. It's meant to protect you from a financial loss.
Well, I'm just going to put Steve's comment up. This is so nice. This is great information and incredibly informative, even for financially savvy parents. I agree.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I hope I don't come across too much as an insurance sales guy. I'm just another parent that saw a risk that needed to be addressed. And I really believe in the value of education, but I also think that at the moment, the risks of college life are a little bit on the shoulders of families and on the shoulders of our children and the loans they have to repay, and that we're all wise to be vigilant in terms of how we make these investments.
I think you're so right. Kind of going back to the beginning of the conversation, you know, again, being a parent, you kind of get to this point where your child's going off to college and you're just kind of excited, you know, like it's an exciting transition. And then and you've also probably gone through a year and a half of the whole admissions process, and you don't step back and think of all the risks that can now happen.
That's right. Yeah. And, you know, the truth is there's some data that shows that we've gone to all this effort to choose the perfect school. And then what's happened in 2017, this is National Student Loan Clearinghouse data. 2017, 1 in 4 students did not re-enroll in the same school that they started in. All right, that's a big number. And when you say 25% of students did not re-enroll in that same school, and there's lots of reasons why that might have happened. It could have been academics, it could be money. A lot of schools front-end financial aid awards so that you may not be able to afford it your junior or sophomore year. So what I really recommend is be vigilant, ask questions of your universities. They're going to be able to tell you the honest truth. But many times they don't even know about tuition insurance, or they've never heard of it themselves. So you're going to do a favor to your friends and other family members just by saying it. And so I see another question.
A few more like details about the renters/dorm insurance, because I think people are kind of confused about that naming too.
Yeah, so I call it renter's insurance, although it's for dorm rooms and students. It's basically for student life. College life has unique needs. Most renter's insurance policies have $500 deductibles. Well, I mean, I don't buy expensive bikes for my kids. So if they have a small claim that's a $300 bike, they're going to get, they'll have a $100 deductible, which is just great. So it typically is meant to replace that stolen bike, the stolen bicycle, or the large claim that ends up being mostly a result of fires or some sprinkler going off in a dorm room. Our renter's insurance policy is the only one like it in the country. It's the only one that contains an exclusive student endorsement that also provides worldwide property coverage. So if they're on study abroad, it's not happening this year, but if they're on spring break or other things, they'll have coverage for that. It's not just limited to the dorm. This is real insurance that they'll be able to take with them off campus as well as
and so what about somebody asks, you know, let's say, unfortunately, in the case that kids might be sent home, does that renter's insurance apply?
So it actually covers your property while it's still in the dorm room, or if you moved it off to a U-Haul storage facility, it's coverage for that as well. So the truth is you don't need liability coverage when you move home, typically because your family has homeowner's insurance. So you're not going to be liable for that. So you can put your policy on pause and restart it when you go back to campus or when you move somewhere else. Our policy is a monthly policy, so you don't have to buy it for the whole year. If you want to buy it monthly, you can, and buy it for the months you need it. So. Oh,
that's good to know. I didn't realize that. And then just to clarify, Karen's asking about cell phones. Are they
so cell phones this is not Apple Care, but they're so Apple Care doesn't replace it. But if the phone's stolen, absolutely it's covered. If it's dropped and there's accidental damage, we don't cover accidental damage.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, I like these questions everybody's had. And I think that these questions are just like what we hear on a regular basis. So I'd encourage you to visit GradGuard for more information. And one thing about GradGuard is these are inexpensive products. So we don't spend a lot of money in advertising. You're not going to find out about these things unless a school introduces it to you. We would like to refer to these as student benefits, which means they're offered to you with either more coverage or at a more affordable price than what you would find just by visiting GradGuard. So we schools to help protect their students. And as a result, today, we've been doing this now 11 years. We've insured more students, and today we insure more college students than anybody in the country. There's a question about loss of employment, I see.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that one, yeah.
Yeah, so it does not currently. We've looked at unemployment insurance and other things. There is a K-12 program that does do that for either job loss or having to move. And so, but our policy does not provide for job loss. And somebody said GradGuard. GradGuard is GRAD, GURAD, GradGuard.
Yes, yeah. Yes. We put the link in the comments.
That's good.
Okay, one last question is, for clarification, and these are like the detailed questions that I don't blame people for wanting to know. Are computers and cell phones covered at the purchase price or at the current price?
Smart question. At the replacement value, not the current value. So it's all about replacement value. So you need to replace the best computer you have. So yeah, you don't want the current value. That's depreciated value is not a good thing for students or families. So, and by the way, when we designed this program, University of California, the system worked with us closely on what are the features they required. And when we designed the program, we went out to find an insurance company who would take it. And they said, you have to take everybody with no credit scores. And these are kind of knucklehead college kids. And oh, by the way, it's got to be affordable with worldwide coverage. This was a hard product to build to begin with. And so I'm really proud of what it does for families and what it does for students. But there are no gotchas in it. That's the most important thing. Just like our tuition insurance, this is a straightforward product. And both of these programs are really valuable. And I hope we can be of service to you.
No, this was great information. Bottom line, going back to the beginning of the conversation, find out what your refund policy is. Check to see if your school is offering tuition insurance, if they're offering renter/dorm insurance, and I guess if it's being offered through GradGuard, if they have continued questions, they can call GradGuard to kind of get
And I'm easy to find. Yeah, I'm easy to find. Basically, I saw a couple more questions too. Buy life insurance whenever you can. There was a question about that. I think the earlier the better, frankly. I don't recommend the Gerber Life program. The only thing I would say is that's not the type of life insurance you really need. You need something more. And then what I would say is that electronics are covered, whether or not they're at home, and whether or not the backpack's stolen when you're at home or when you're on campus. And so again, filing a claim for a stolen backpack is a very common claim that we find. Our average claim is just under $1,000. So it typically makes filing a claim on a homeowner's policy impractical. Our average claim for tuition insurance is just slightly less than $20,000.
Wow.
So what the thing is, renter's insurance happens. The claims we have are much more frequent, but the loss size is lower. With tuition insurance, it's the opposite. It's less frequent, but higher losses.
Wow, that's very interesting. Okay, well, thank you, John. This is really fascinating.
This has been fun, and Debbie, I think for all of us as college parents, thank you for your leadership. You have such a great passion for this, and I think you really helped demystify the whole funding process and this whole road to college journey that we're all on. So I've got another, like I said, my twins are 12, so I've got another a good.
Oh my God, you've got another good 6 years, and believe me, I am sure things are going to be completely different than what's going on today.
Well, I hope everybody feel free to visit me. I'm easy to find on both Twitter and GradGuard.com is another place you can reach me as well.
Well, thank you. Thanks, John, for being here tonight, answering all these questions, just sharing, what insurance is all about. And honestly, also for kind of creating these really comprehensive and, affordable programs that weren't there before, so.
Debbie, I saw one more question. I hate to answer it, but I don't want to interrupt. There's two things to make certain that insurance works for you. One is if you have for tuition insurance, make certain that if your son or daughter has underlying health conditions that they're being treated for, that you get a verification from your physician that they are well enough to attend school and enroll in school. That's important. The second thing for renter's insurance is to take pictures of your receipts, save them, take pictures of your stuff. It just makes it's not.
Which is good for any type of insurance, even
it's good. Yeah. I've got on my phone a little, photo of all my property, and it just makes it on my receipts for anything that it's expensive. So when you're preparing to move them on campus, everything from that $20 to $5 fan to the $2,000 computer and the screens, make sure you take pictures of them because it'll make it easy to file a claim. And we pay claims quickly. There's no hassle there, but for insurance to work, it should be easy. And those are the two things that help make it easy. And we are best known because we pay claims. So,
wow, that's great. Okay.
Thank you, Debbie. I really appreciate
you.
it. And everyone, thank you for your time tonight. Good luck with your students and good luck as we all endure this era of coronavirus.
Yes. Great questions, guys. And hopefully, I think everybody got a lot of good information tonight. Okay. Right. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.